Welcome to the Unfinished Bridge podcast, a production by the Shehu Musa Yar'Adua Foundation to inspire and promote a just and inclusive Nigeria.
And this is to introduce Zainab. Zainab, this is actually her project. She managed it from the beginning to the end. And so very proud of the first podcast was recorded here yesterday with the president of MacArthur Foundation, John Palfrey. And he did share, he was sitting right there where you're sitting, and he shared an anecdote that he thinks the very first podcast was recorded, that he was involved in the recording of the very first podcast. So he was working at Beckman Center at the time, and that he had two collaborators who came together in a studio and recorded MP3 files, and then they put it out there. And that's like the rudiments of what podcast is now today. So it was interesting to be talking to someone who played a role, or what I say is the Tim Berners-Lee of the podcast generation. So we're just is this a laid back conversation? The podcast is called The Unfinished Bridge. And the name is interesting because if you look outside, there is an unfinished bridge, and it's symbolic because the work of nation building for us is perpetually unfinished. No matter how well you've done, there's still more to be done. And this is the challenge to the next generation to complete that work that people like Shehu Musa Yar'Adua fought for, died for, and now have left to the next generation to do. So this podcast is really about that and having those conversations. And today we've had a conversation about a post-oil future. And I just want us to imagine, and Your Majesty, 2050, the world has transitioned from fossil fuels. And most of the advanced countries have changed their energy sources. Iwereland, what do you imagine it would look like?
2050?
Yeah, 2050.
Honestly, 2050 is not as far away as it sounds. It's only 27 years away. Well, the realist in me wants to speak first. And you hear a lot of people say for Nigeria needs 12, 15 years of consistency in policy and governance for it to even be able to set its launch pad and then take off from there uninterrupted. 12, 15 years. And so when you ask that question, immediately I'm thinking, is Iwereland going to do that independent of whether or not Nigeria has that desired foundation? So that's my first thought. But to answer, in the ideal situation in my mind, it is an interesting you mentioned unfinished bridge, because in the Niger Delta we need a lot of bridges, a lot. And there is a bridge that's finally about to connect our ancestral hometown to the mainland, which obviously everybody's so excited about. And we ask ourselves, so are we going to stop being a water people? Are we going to stop relying on boats? And while most people shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, embrace technology, it saddens me that we could not patronize the waterways as our desire for infrastructure comes. So in 2050, imagining this ideal Iwereland, somehow there's a hybrid between the bridges being there and we're able to drive to the farthest reach of the kingdom and the coastal communities, but also, I don't know why I'm so sentimental about the waterways. Maybe because the title I bear is King of Water. Maybe that's why. And so I would actually like to see it almost be like a model example of, while you may see infrastructure, in buildings, and not just buildings for the sake of building sustainable buildings, but we're still utilizing our waterways. And I cannot shake that image. I can't. It's very tempting to say, oh, it will look like Dubai in the Niger Delta. I don't want it to look like Dubai. I don't imagine it to look like Dubai. It's such an easy guess, it's an easy response. So hopefully we're in 27 years' time, we are setting midway. We should have laid our foundations midway into giving the world an idea what a mangrove metropolitan area looks like. That is not New York, London, Dubai, or any other environment. Essentially charting your own course. Exactly.
So what key elements would you like to see in both global and national energy transitions to consider it just for the people of Niger Delta? Because I think that's the main focus, for it to be just for everyone.
I think that's part of the discussions we had where we're coming from now at the round table. I wish the way capitalism is operated today wasn't so numbers-driven, profit-driven. It's going to be very, very hard to tell people to not focus on the bottom line. Because even these discussions we have about the planet today and climate change, there's still a lot of people who say the right things, but they are still living lives that they're living a good life that contributes to the problems that we're seeing with greenhouse emissions and all of that. So just for the Niger Delta, I think a good place to start is what's his name that closed us out? The gentleman that closed us out.
Nemo Bassi, yes.
And I've actually used those words to people before. It would be great if IOCs who have been drilling for 60 plus years in our environment, these people have made near trillions of dollars. Near. How much would it cost you to demonstrate to the world that we want to make this place better than we left it? Yes, they can argue and say we were not responsible for the spills. It was local communities and saboteurs and all of that who went to burst pipelines, and it was not our making. You can give that argument. But just to show to humanity and say, you know what, for all the money we have made here, we will clean up the place. We will plant mangroves. We will help them with shore protection away from mangroves. That would actually be a great foundation.
That's the very least.
And once they have laid that, we take it from there. I think that would be a good start.
That sounds very just. I'm really keen on hearing it, and I know you're constrained a little bit to talk about the economic development plan, but you've hinted at it a little bit, and I just want to tease out details. Because you're imagining 27 years from now and the Iwereland looking in its own way unique, but thriving as an ecosystem and an ecological environment. Now, what are the pillars of your economic development plan? I know I've heard hints about aquaculture, ecotourism, and all of that. Do you want to speak a little bit to those at least?
Well, I guess, like you said, trying to keep it close to one's chest. But, the people themselves, the human beings themselves who live there. Because the deputy head of mission, Switzerland, was just with us in the other room having this conversation. What resource does Switzerland have?
Sushi.
What resource do they have? It is brilliant minds and people that have made Switzerland what it is. And that's why people go there for, you think you're going there to buy watches or chocolate or go skiing. You could do that anywhere. But because there was investment in the minds and in the lives, the quality of there, that's why this brain is the It's the most valuable resource on the planet. And so the brains of Ishekiri people, Iwere people, once you have invested in it and their minds are alive, even my own dreams and imaginations, I'm sure, will pale in comparison to what 1 million plus others will come up with. And as long as, you capture what it is that they're imagining, who knows? Yes, I said I didn't want to compare it to Dubai, London, New York. You could actually see real Wakanda as a result of investing in the minds of these people.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's actually possible. And Wakanda is a fictional place. But but you saw what Wakanda did to men of color all over the world, that, there is this African sovereign nation that is a superpower. It brought so much excitement and inspiration to the black man in the whole world. And so I feel investing in the minds of our people, whatever the environment has given us, whatever nature has given us beneath, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Mind is the real resource, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So one last question. As stakeholders prepare for the COP28, what key message and aspirations would you like to present on behalf of Iwereland? And can international partnership support these aspirations?
Well, I'm not too technical in that direction, so I'll just speak as a layman.
Okay, that'll work.
I would say that they should consider what we just spoke about in terms of all this money you have made from this environment. Come back and fix it, improve on it. And I actually imagine in them doing that, they will want to come and invest in different ways, because once that environment is restored to its original, what's the word I'm looking for? Its original state. A global economy can come from its original state.
Yes.
And now they probably would now claim, we helped restore this to its original state, let's be the first partakers. And so it's not the typical pitch as to green conversations or climate conversations, but it's my own.
Thank you. Your Majesty, Your Highness, do you have anything you would like to add or say?
Thank you. Just reverberating what His Majesty said with regards to when the key stakeholders for COP28 are coming into the room to discuss in, I think, a few weeks,
Yes.
towards the end of November, in December, just to remember the need for, and I believe that with the changing times, people are doing business for more than profit nowadays. I think COVID did a lot to humanity as a whole, to bring consciousness and conscience into business dealings and business doings. And so as stakeholders gather, to remember that there is such a thing as more than for-profit business, sustainable business models, and looking into our communities like the Niger Delta that have been negatively impacted by whether it be energy extraction or even just by virtue of our position, environmental degradation, to really begin to, I think, there was something you were talking about, Amara, in the boardroom before, or in the office before we went to the round table, about losses and damages.
Yes.
And looking to, I believe that more than the environment, the people have also been damaged.
Yes. Yes.
And to really begin to invest again in the restoration of the mindset of the people. Exactly. That would be my addition, I think. So whilst you're coming and you're beautifying the place, a beautiful place with the damaged mindset will just become damaged again. And so to really begin to think to the mindset of the people, and seeing how they could restore identity, restore confidence in the people, in the way that they do business and engage the communities. That's it from me.
Thank you so much. I think that also speaks to what His Majesty was saying earlier when he was visiting a kingdom and they were embarrassed about it. I don't think, because it's not their fault. So I think that has to do with the mindset of they're embarrassed to be in that state and in that position. So Lord has put in there.
Yes, you are stealing my thunder there, because I was actually engaged by His Majesty's storytelling in the boardroom, especially just visiting communities and this telling us what he's experienced in these communities. And I wonder if he has maybe an anecdote to share with the listening audience, especially something that could stick in their minds. And maybe this is a pattern shot from him that speaks to leadership, community leadership in the next in this century that we're talking about, and looking at reversing some of these institutional and historical wrongs.
Well, my wife and I were chatting as we're coming up here, and she was just talking similar lines about the model being servant leadership, because I use the boarding school analogy in there. You come in JS1, they mess you up, you cannot wait to be a senior so that you can dish it out. And it's really sad dishing it out to people who were not part of your humiliation.
Yes.
It's really, really sad. And so we haven't had enough examples of servant leadership in Nigeria. We haven't. The man whose memory inspired this building, Yar'Adua, I think he's one of very few, truly very few, because we also romanticize our founding fathers in Nigeria. We actually do. And when you hear some other accounts, the typical Nigerian way, keep it quiet inside the house, don't put your dirty linen. We do that a lot in Nigeria.
Yes,
just keep hiding things. And there's something I've actually said a few times, and I haven't said it so much recently, but I think when you say parting shot, something that really informs the way we see positions of authority and power in this country is actually kings and thrones, not presidents.
True.
Because if it was president, we would be inspired by what Americans are doing, those who invented the presidency. But the center of power in the mind of the African man is looking at what the king who he and his father grew up seeing, this is how the king is. And obviously you do not argue with the king. Don't tell the king no, how dare you. And while our palaces and our thrones deserve all the respect and reverence, it's very important that we actually see what kingship is about in its true sense. I always compare kingship to God, because that's really the model of what monarchy is, trying to reflect God as a king in heaven. And so the responsibility of a king here is to create, improve, grow, better the lives of his people and his kingdom. Unfortunately, our fallen nature as human beings, ego creeps in as to how a king should be. I'm faced with this every day, where my people constantly reminding me, Baba, don't say please. Don't dress down. Because yes, they believe they want to protect me so that people do not abuse how easily accessible I may seem. They feel, our king cannot be trivialized. I understand and I appreciate that. But I can speak for my people. Our people have to see the king not just simply sitting back and everything comes to him without simply moving a finger. because that actually informs the way the people behave. You know, the men feel, why should I work? Because, believe it or not, it's from idolizing their kings. They feel like I'm just going to sit back and be entitled and tax and charge, you know, pay without necessarily adding value. And it's not that the king doesn't add value, but they may not see what the king is doing to add value. They just see the king exalted, looking good. And for every man, I too want to just sit back, relax, and live like a king. And that mindset has informed the way people you become the governor, you become the senator, you become the president. Don't tell me. So to actually eat the humble pie and come down, you know, and that's, for me, that's what it is with these people, and going to them on the occasion, taking off my shoes. It's not a show. They need to see that the king can come from his lofty place and enter the mud with them. You know, because it's it is too easy to sit down in the palace and do nothing. It's too easy, or be seen to be, you know, but to actually go out there, you know, people will even want to protect you and say, Baba, don't do that. Why? You know, you should not be, you know, they're not even supposed to be seeing the king every day, which is true. But that narrative and that perception, I think we can find a halfway approach. Yeah. So for this thing that consciously or unconsciously shapes the mind of the average Nigerian, to see a king actually coming down to hopefully apply Midas touch to a situation, and then he can go back to his lofty place. So it's not that he's going to be living and rolling in the mud, but they need to see that if he can do that, so I too can be upright, can be hardworking, blah, blah, blah. So that's my part in short. I don't know if it answers.
Oh, it does. I mean, redefining what living like a king, you know, actually looks like. It is definitely something that worth thinking about. And thank you for your words of wisdom. We've come to the end of this podcast. I'm stealing your words.
Yes, thank you so much, Your Majesty, Your Highness. I don't know if I can call you that. And it was an honor to have you on today's episode. Thank you for gracing us with your wonderful presence, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.